The American Heart Association has released new dietary guidelines encouraging Americans to eat more plant-based protein, low-fat dairy, and more unsaturated fats. The guidelines conflict with the newly revamped food pyramid announced in January by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which advises more consumption of red meat, full-fat dairy, and whole milk. The AHA's recommendations align with long-standing mainstream science, while RFK Jr.'s are a sharp departure, promoting more saturated fats. The one area of agreement between the two: eat plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. To help us unpack these new guidelines and what they mean for you, we are joined tonight by Dr. Vin Gupta, practicing pulmonologist and senior medical analyst for MS Now. Thanks for being with us, Doctor.
Good evening, Joyce. Thanks for having me.
So these new AHA guidelines stress lifelong habits over short-term diets. Why is that so important for heart health?
Joyce, interestingly enough, we're learning a lot just in the span of a few years about how lifelong habits, what you put in your body, even as a child, can impact what the arteries around your heart see. And over the course of time, if you're eating a lot of saturated fats, if you're eating red meat every single day, whole milk, other saturated fats or foods with saturated fats, processed, ultra-processed foods, that's going to mean something over the course of time for what your arteries experience. And that's going to be plaque buildup. And that is a big, big risk factor for heart disease, which is the leading killer across the United States. And so that's the concern, is that we've really been talking about heart disease risk in those that are older and focusing on treatment as you get older, lifestyle changes as you get older. But we should be talking about this even folks that are younger.
And the AHA says eat real food. So what does that look like day to day for most families?
Well, and this is where the guidelines are the guidelines, and yet the lived reality of American families across the country, Joyce, you and I have had this conversation, often is determined by more than just what guidelines say. It's economics, it's affordability, it's all those things combined. So fruits and vegetables, half your plate. If it's fruit and vegetables, so-called whole foods, you can eat them as they are. You're not preparing them or doing, adding them to other recipes. Those are whole foods. That's really the core of a healthy diet. Plant-based proteins, as you said, tofu, beans, those are preferred. Lean meats, chicken, fish, of course, the occasional steak, totally fine. But that's really the point here, is balanced diet, Joyce. And I don't think we heard that from the Secretary of Health, where he was talking a lot about whole milk, which is discouraged often because it has a lot of saturated fat. Just 1 cup of whole milk is 20% of your recommended intake of saturated fat in a day. He's saying, let's just do it to your heart's content. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And so that's where there's that disagreement, that disconnect here between AHA guidelines and what RFK put out earlier this year.
And then just explain a little bit more why saturated fats compared to unsaturated fats, why there is such a big difference, and we need to pay attention to that.
For sure. So, saturated fats, whole food or whole milk, donuts, packaged bars, they have a lot of saturated fat. And that doesn't get metabolized in our bodies well, and it predisposes to the buildup of bad cholesterol that builds up in our arteries. So-called unsaturated fats, like olive oil, which everybody likes to talk about because it's healthier as an alternative, is easily metabolized by our body, Joyce, and actually promotes the development of good cholesterol that actually breaks down bad plaques in our arteries. And so that's the difference. And that's why I think what the AHA put out today is so important. It's a reminder that a balanced diet is important, everything in moderation, nothing in excess, but to stay away ultimately from saturated fats. There is nothing, Joyce, that's happened in the last year under the Kennedy HHS department that has argued for saturated fats being a part of a healthy diet in excess. And that's what he's putting out there. And I think that's what's wrong about their guidance. And that's what's helpful about the AHA guidance.
And then how can people tell the difference between the evidence-based nutrition guidance and political messaging?
If I knew the answer to that, Joyce, I'd be able to hopefully solve a lot more problems than just the nutrition dilemma here. But I would say that, there's something that rings like we've heard it before, and now we're hearing it again with the AHA announcement today, that I think should provide some reassurance to all our listeners today, because it's not good. This is not good for the country that we have the Secretary of Health saying one thing and a leading medical society having to course correct. That creates confusion. But I'd say, does something guidance that's health related, does it pass the sniff test? And the Secretary of Health saying eat red meat to your heart's content, whole milk as much as you like, saturated fats as much as you like. Does that sound like that makes sense? And I think the answer today with the AHA guidelines is balanced diet, calmed, deliberative guidance on nutrition that frankly is nothing that new. None of this is all that new. These food pyramids that they're putting out there is not novel. It's a modification every 5 years of existing guidance. This is slightly modified from guidance that we've already been talking about for decades and decades. I think that's something to keep in mind. If somebody's giving you a totally different take, think twice, look twice, scrutinize the evidence, and always ask questions. Also, I'll just say, just for your listeners, it's easy for us to talk about guidelines. It's a lot harder for people to get access to healthy foods if they don't have SNAP, which is being defunded. If they don't have access to durable healthcare insurance, 24 million Americans vulnerable. Joyce, how do we talk about these issues if people don't have basic resources to access healthcare or healthy foods? So I think that's the broader dilemma.
We're going to have to leave it there, and I'm in complete agreement with you. That is the broader dilemma. Great insight as always, Dr. Gupta. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.